presentation. And it's like, meanwhile, as the world, what we call renewable natural gas, is dominated by biomethane worldwide. And yet I had to, and I remember the way I actually put this as a paragraph in the conversation piece was that it is actually represents a first time demonstration on Australian soil. And that was enough for me to get the tick to say, yes, you can publish something because somebody criticised the technology. So Australia does have, how to say, inhibition to anything new, but even though it is it is shown to work, internationally. And I think if there's going to be one thing that helps embrace circular economy is actually embracing first of its kind, even though it's not first. It's not first at all. But yeah, that was just one of the things I thought I'd share with you. Yeah.
Just a question with Joel. You can answer it for me. Just with regard to, I guess, the whole pyrolysis process and the energy being created, being used as obviously as heat to dry your material down. Is there a point where you can reach where you can utilise that heat for cogeneration and electrification of your vehicles, etc. at Logan? Like, is there a sort of efficiencies that can be gained where you're dealing with your drying process, but you're also then using some of that energy for cogeneration, electrification?
Not purely with biosolids is how I'm going to answer that one. I'll probably go into it a bit more, but it's about the calorific value of your feedstock. And so we're producing enough to dry the biosolids, and we have to do a little bit of supplementation here and there to keep it stable. But if you change, I suppose, the feedstock, you produce more energy, and then that in turn, yes, could go down the route. We purposely did heat exchangers and hot water system for the drying, and that was an operability kind of scenario with us because we didn't have any AG plants on site either, so we weren't really dealing with the biogas as in a gas kind of way, if that makes sense. Gas kind of way.
Does that answer?
Does that answer?
Yeah. Thank you. Question for Neil. I guess with all the green spaces that you have in the city of Sydney, the offsets that can be utilised, as farmers are looking at in terms of, carbon credits by offsetting some of their land to not be utilised for agricultural production, they're locking that up and looking at carbon credits. Is it something that the City of Sydney has looked at in terms of
it's really good question. So now you can see the top of the pyramid, right? For offsets. Now our focus is actually on good quality offsets. Like you can see the industry has just been flooded with just really cheap offshore offsets. So something from a City of Sydney perspective, we're trying to push those good quality ACCUs and probably with more of an indigenous focus. But anything sort of generated from rural Australia is where I think a lot of the sort of environmentally conscious organisations are trying to move to. So I think that is a huge opportunity in terms of if that land is locked to use that as the offsets, because that market is going to go crazy and it has gone crazy. So more and more organisations are committing to carbon neutral. And there's more and more scrutiny on the type of offsets. So it's the more better quality offsets that could be produced, particularly within Australia, I think there's a massive opportunity there.
One final question for Django, I guess, with regard to the macroalgae at Picton. I know water treatment plants produce a lot of CO2, yeah? So is there an opportunity, and I see there's a company in Spain, Alga Energy, that are utilising, there's a power station where they put the CO2 from the power station through cells to produce, to grow microalgae. Is that something that Sydney Water may look at in the future, like taking that carbon dioxide, pumping it through microalgae tubes?
Yeah, in fact, we've had some conversations with the algae team at UTS. They've been doing a bit of work on a sort of modularised microalgae system. So I think it's definitely something we want to look at, you know, coupling it with a biogas plant and scrub biogas through it. Yeah, I mean, the other benefit of those sort of systems is they can be lower footprint than the raceway type systems. So we're definitely keen to look at it. We're quite land constrained and need to find those lower footprint options. We haven't done anything on the ground yet, but I'd hope to see something in the next couple of years because, like City of Sydney, we'll ultimately be relying on carbon offsetting and to close the gap, and we ideally like to be able to do that within our business. And I think algae is a really neat fit because we've got the nutrients and we've got the carbon. It's just a matter of finding the space and getting the numbers to work.
Thank you.
Right, I'll speak here. So I was just gonna go back to the key theme of the conference, circular economy. So I'm thinking the circular economy can only be successful if you can find an avenue for reuse of the product you're making. Otherwise, it's not circular. Yesterday we heard a talk, I forgot from whom, where they were mentioning water recycling, purified water recycling, or Class A or whichever form, but it was mentioned that people did not even want to wash their car with it. And so acceptance is really becoming critical for this success. So it's not just about doing it right, but it's actually how you sell it right. So two questions. First, for Joe, you expect you'll have some convincing to do to actually get the biochar onto land, and what type of resistance you expect to find there. And second, for Liana, I'm wondering if you can give everyone some advice about possible reward mechanisms that could be created for people to take up these new products that they're not used to.
So there's not really the resistance of applying it to the land. We've got a lot of people that want to buy it from us. The problem is really around the Indo-West Coast for biochar. So under the Indo-West Coast for biosolids, we can sell it, but we can only sell it to people that are resource users under the code. So there's only a limited pool of people that we actually legally can sell to. And that's when the Indo-West Coast for biochar comes in and moves it towards a more of an unrestricted use. And that's significantly going to open up the avenues to be able to apply it to land and apply it to the people that actually want to purchase it from us.
The question about incentives, I think it's a really great one to a person that's really into biodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good question. I'm going to put two hats on as I think about an answer. One is going back to my commercial days and thinking about how you drive customer behaviours and marketing incentives. And it's to recognise that there is an opportunity for education. One of the big gaps that we've had in the climate debate in Australia, and I think that extends to biodiversity, is we actually haven't done a lot of great public education around why these issues matter. As a country, we have a fantastic track record around public education campaigns. New York is often on the phone with policymakers in Australia about public education campaigns like smoking cessation, drink driving campaigns. We've got a really good track record of helping change behaviour by helping people understand the benefits to society. So it's actually quite interesting. As a country, we have a really good track record of mobilising people to say this is something you need to do and it's helpful. And the reason to do it is because it's helpful for other people. I think water conservation is another good example of that. So I think the first thing is to recognise that there is an opportunity around education that says this is why you do it. You know, you do it because it's helping preserve this ecosystem. It's helping enable water, you know, to be there further down the track. So there's an education opportunity. And with that education opportunity comes the kind of marketing reward, which is about making people feel good for doing it. The truth is also that at the end of the day, I have infinite faith in an advertising firm or a marketing firm to get through and cut through and create appetite for product. We are very, very sophisticated at doing that as a society. And so long as somebody's willing to pay the bills to do that, it's absolutely possible. And then the second kind of comes back to that question around, are we pricing things accurately? You spoke very clearly about the urgency that emerged in the last drought, when you suddenly realise that, this is going to happen. And these goods that we currently take for granted, like water and clean air and things, will eventually have prices attached to them. They just don't fully yet in quite the same way. But so I think there is an opportunity for us to be actually helping shape and advocate for systems that, again, price appropriately. Water, it's absurd, right? I'm not the only person who thinks this, as you get in the shower and think, this is drinking water. This is nuts, right? This is going down the drain. I'm watering my garden with drinking water. That's nuts. We know that we're in a system that is unsustainable. So I think also there's a role for saying, hey, we actually need to have differential pricing for these things, because these are not the real costs that we are, there's a huge cost for that water going down the drain. Sydney Water's thinking about it. The average consumer isn't below, but they could be if we advocated for it.
Maybe one of the researchers want to ask a question.
I have a quick question, just more from a selfish perspective. I am working at Southern Cross University in Lismore, and we're developing some pilot projects from federal grant money, and my biggest obstacle is the amount of red tape that we have to go through to try and test these pilot projects. So working with the local government and EPA just to trial a system. They want to know what emissions you're going to be producing. All of these variables that you don't know until you run the machine or the reactor or whatever it is. And so my question would be, is there any strategies in place to come up with sort of safe spaces for innovation where it's easier for people to put forward ideas and test them without knowing exactly what's going to be coming out of the system?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure whether our industry folk can actually answer that, because they're not really coming from a researcher's perspective. But I'm sure Stefano, Michael, or yourselves can do that. I mean, we just went through the whole process of our own Victoria Park.
I'll just go one. Yes, so for one of our projects, we do a lot of pilot trials, and usually put some equipment in a shipping container and take it on site. I presented on the Monday as part of the summit, a trial with a 20-foot container for an ammonia capture plant with the water utility. That actually went quite smoothly. We were able to get things done on time. It was only a 14-day trial, right? And we had to get everything done, make sure the steps were all good, and that the wire was, the cable that sends electricity to the container was up high now, within I guess regulations. But the more interesting challenge was we have another pilot plant within the university, and the university asked us to get a building approval for the shipping container. And I tell you what, if you ever want to go through that process, I could give you some advice, but it wasn't the easiest process at all. I've never gone through a building approval before in my life, but the local council probably thought it was interesting, but it came from the university. But it's a really nice shipping container now. It's insulated, it's sent to the client, and it's everything. But there's red tape, but you just have to factor that in. But maybe anyone's had experience, definitely might have some more experience on that. But these are important, and they're just getting tighter and tighter.
I'm good here. This one, yes. It really depends on on what you're targeting. So we've been working on different sorts of pilots over the years, and as long as you're not trying to go outside of what's regulated, they tend to happen generally pretty smoothly, and depends on what side you want it. So that's critical. So it goes very smooth when we are working at the sewage treatment plant site, and we just there's space for it, there's the infrastructure, there's the support. And normally it's just, well, you got the funding and it's implemented pretty quickly. However, with Bernadatte and Sean, the whole team of NICE, we've been pretty busy setting up a pilot demonstration for collection of urine and conversion of that urine to liquid fertilizer. We want to do it in a public location for visibility, so we picked a public location in Brisbane, and so the red tape there basically took us around 2 years. And the key is, okay, we're doing something that is not captured by regulation, and we want to do something that is not compliant with the plumbing codes. So just working out what to do with it took us probably 1 year. Once we realized what we need to do, it took us another year to actually get it done, just to get that one level of approval. Then on top of that, we had to look at landowners' approval to actually have the site, and it's still ongoing, but the satisfaction will be great. This is actually going to be in place, and I invite you to visit us at Victoria Park. Everyone, starting from January 2024, we will have a toilet block contribute, just like you have contributed to Sean's project here. We have the difference there. We will have also female toilets. That was one of the key challenges, that separate urine, and we'll have a container, but we were not allowed to just have a container in the middle of a park in the city. So actually have to do some cladding and just decorate it to actually blend in nicely and not be visually impactful. So yeah, so it really depends, on a sewage treatment plant site, pretty much, I would say easy, but many challenges when you're trying to go into the public realm.
So yeah, just don't give up hope. That's the key message.
Just something I'd probably say from the business side or end user side. You just have a big, challenges of building approvals. That's a common thing in any project that I have to do in terms of internal battle is often a lot harder than the external. The key advice I guess to say in that respect is just you have to try different angles, and I mentioned it's not what you say but how you say. But so you have to try different angles, different approaches, use different stakeholders to sort of emphasize the benefit. So a big thing, I might be pushing a particular agenda, but a certain stakeholder may know I want this and this and this, and it's unquantifiable. You use other stakeholders to sort of more highlight the benefit and to highlight that benefit is going to outweigh any potential risk, and that sort of helps push that agenda. It is really, it's a complex one, particularly like PFAS that was talked through, where we are now becoming so risk averse to say, well, that thing may cause the next. So it is a challenge, but I would sort of say try different angles and different approaches through different people is probably my key advice.
Just want to add one, totally echo that, and just add one thing from a quite a different perspective, but again about challenges kind of getting stuff done in bureaucratic environments. I was working on a crime reduction program in New South Wales, and we had to get a whole lot of agencies to work in a very different way and share information and all sorts of stuff they'd never done before. The key is, I love that idea of getting stakeholders to advocate on your behalf, but it's also about who you're having conversations with. So to the extent that you have anyone in your network who can elevate the conversation to somebody more senior. For us, at the end of the day, we got all the heads of agency and we made them meet with the Premier every month, and that very quickly sharpens people's attention, people's focus, And then the other thing that you've heard from a lot of people is the power of those targets. So anywhere where your program can connect into somebody's target is going to make a big difference. I think there's a really big reason that we've seen so much progress in Logan. You had a 2020 target, right? And you can hear how seriously you took that. And when there's a 2035 target, there's more luxury in getting, not easy, right? But there's more, there's a reason that we're at different levels in some sense of those developments. So yeah, elevating conversations, bringing it back to the end objective and the target wherever possible. It might feel impossible, but you might find within your broader network there's some people who can elevate things to decision makers.
So good. And I think targets are probably an estimated way of actually achieving more circular economy implementation. And if you remember, was that 15, 16 when our former government had not set a renewable energy target, RET, and even what that did in terms of even just the bioenergy sector, which is nascent in Australia, for want of a better word, it basically meant they were marking time for that 12 months until they set their RET. You remember it, yeah.
I don't know if there are any policymakers in the room, but I think education is something that's, for me, is really problematic. That successive state governments of all persuasions have just systematically dismantled huge extension systems, especially in environmental, agricultural, water fields. And that's left us in a big hole in terms of messaging to a community. And that affects all sorts of current problems in animal and plant systems around biosecurity. We've got this current Verona mite in the bee population, for example. There's one guy in New South Wales DPI who's trying to manage that whole escape. And the impact that that's going to have on agricultural production, just the whole insect ecosystem, plant ecosystems is immeasurable. I'm sure everybody in here understands how important bees are. Well, the general public doesn't. And we need to muscle up on education, and universities should be a very big part of that. They used to be really good at it structurally when we had colleges of advanced education, for example, delivering applicable science. But that's a problem. To answer your question, Toby, I talk to my legal people regularly about some future work they might get. I intend to bend the law, not break it. And you've got to find a pathway that works for you, and that can be, do a sanity check, ask people, ask the regulators or the bureaucrats who are administering the regulations, show you where you're wrong. And I know you can't do that, but I often ask for forgiveness, not permission, knowing that I'm on solid ground. When push comes to shove, that's important. And
Glad you said it.
Yeah, well, I can say that. That's right. I respect, the room in that sense. But so potential outcomes for you are to find an industry partner who's prepared to muscle up. I think that's probably the best thing you can do. And they're out there. You just got to find them face to face. We don't have enough industry people here in this particular project, in my view, and we don't have any policymakers in the room. And I think that's a deficiency that we've got to correct in these sorts of forums. Because if they're not here, they're not going to hear the message.
Just to add quickly why wastewater treatment plants are great places to do innovative work. One, air modelling and odour, that's our day-to-day kind of job. So we have all the models, it's kind of easy for us to do that type of stuff. We've got operators on site. We're kind of in the grey area when it comes to planning schemes. So a lot of the things that would cause issues around doing these types of things is why wastewater treatment plants are great places to do these types of projects. But I suppose the other things is they're also located usually away from sensitive receptors as well. So that's kind of one of the reasons why these types of projects can go quicker when it's located with a water utility. But the other one is that we, if they're any good, have really good relationships with our EPA or DES and those types of things. And we foster those relationships because they're the ones that, one, we could ask questions about how to do things, what are the risks associated with it, and really go down that path. So the gasification facility wouldn't have got as far or as quickly as it had if we hadn't had DES support. They came to sites, they did the demonstration plant. Our EA license was written around incineration codes, but there was that flexibility there to actually say, can we and will we meet it? And we were given the opportunity to do that. So again, it's about relationship building, but it's also about, yes, having that industry partner that can support you to go on those sorts of places. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind adding a bit just to share a recent experience. It was with the macroalgae pilot that I showed on screen earlier. And it touches on a lot of the points that the other panelists here have said, that definitely fostering a relationship with the EPA, talking to them early, but language is important. You know, you've got to frame things as pilots and demonstrations that immediately puts a different lens on the risk associated with it. You know, connecting the dots of what it's going to do to hit their government objectives. But in that particular case for us, the bigger hurdles were internal. With piloting, you don't want to, our asset standards designed for max reliability, asset life, all of that. You've got to be able to bypass that stuff to pilot. So that is the flip side to working in a utility environment, is depending on the given situation, you do potentially face those issues of ring fencing part of an operational site to do a pilot, getting around all of the asset standards that they have. So for us, that was the biggest issue, but what made it successful was engagement with the EPA. And then we got the CEO of the EPA out once it was commissioned and got them to have a look at it. And it was a really positive project in building a bit of confidence in what's a difficult relationship at the moment, I'll say. So those pilots are really important in actually building trust, I think, between your regulator and the organisation.
So I think that's a really good point just to end on, in that you've all touched on the importance of the tri-sector approach of researchers, industry and government all working together toward a common goal. And we've now passed on 3:30, that was a quick hour, and I'm really appreciative of all the panel's generous knowledge sharing. It's been very giving and much appreciated, and thank you to the audience for also contributing to that. So a round of applause to